meditation can lead to connection with other people. And I think the Smith Center embodies some of this. So having some group connections with other people, and that's really important. For accessing mindfulness training, which I think can be helpful, now that a lot of people are sheltering at home, it is a time where you might want to explore some of these practices if you're drawn to them. There are many apps, but here are some I list. 10% Happier, which I've tried these to some extent, these that I mentioned, and I think they all have merit. If you're a healthcare provider or in that area, you can get 10% Happier free now for 3 months, I think, or more. If you're not, you can get it for a week and try it. Healthy Minds is from a really good group, and that's now become free. Inside Timer is a really, it has a lot of variety, and you can explore there. You'll find a lot, and maybe something will resonate with you. Calm is from Apple. They advertise now, and there are many apps. Now, the Smith Center, I know, has some programs that would come under the mindfulness training category, and so that's a great place to do it when you can, when they open up. And I think even now online, there may be some, and Kirsten can maybe say that at the end. And I mentioned mindfulness-based stress reduction, which is branded and standardized, and that's a valuable course if you want to go deeper. And not that deep, it's really more of an introduction, but it gives you some depth. And finally, if you have a faith-based practice, you're already through your, it could be Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, they all now have some kind of mindfulness that's wrapped in, and you can find that through your faith. This is my garden here, one of my beds. So here's the radishes, and on the sides, to the left and right, are turnips, kale, mustard, and arugula in the back. And I've got other beds, but that's a segue to talk about diet. And so diet, in terms of the oncologic world, I'm not aware that any diet has been proven to reverse or cure cancer, but overweight and obesity have been linked to many cancers. And there are these hormones that circulate throughout the whole body that are changed and often elevated in obesity. So they may be the cause of 13 different cancers that are associated with overweight and obesity. So it looks like something about obesity and overweight is permeating the body and leading to some dysregulation. And so if you don't know what BMI is, it's body mass index, it's just a metric that is based on your height and your weight. And the heavier that you are, the higher your BMI is. And so you want to try to keep your BMI in this range of 18.5 to 25. And if you're a little over it, I wouldn't freak out about that. But if you're way over, it probably is in your interest to try to bring it down into that or closer to that range, whether you have cancer, you've had it, or if you've never had it, it's a good range to be in. And so whether you're in that range or not, it's important what you eat. And there's so many diets, and I can't really go into them, and I'm not actually an expert on diet. I kind of tend to the Mediterranean diet, and that's what I eat. And I'll give more detail on that. And that's a pretty balanced diet, and is favored by a lot of the national organizations I mentioned. But there are diets in the cancer world and also in the weight loss world and in the heart disease or prevention area that are popular or at least get a lot of press. So the ketogenic diet is a drastic reduction in carbohydrates so that one is eating almost no carbs and no sugar, virtually no sugar, and then getting most of the calories from fat. And that leads to burning fat as the main energy source rather than what usually it is, which is glucose. And so you're burning ketones. And that leads to a different environment for the human organism. And some people have promoted this as beneficial in the cancer setting or for weight loss in general. It's not unlike the Atkins diet in a general way. And I would just say about that, if you're drawn to that, I would suggest strongly that first of all, you let your physician know, and second of all, you work on that diet with a trained expert in nutrition and/or your physician. I would not embark on that independently. It's unbalanced in many ways, and I'm not saying that it could not help some people, but one needs to be careful. Now, another dietary approach that's gotten some popularity is fasting during cancer treatment. And I think the general idea here is that cancer cells are very active and replicating and not really easily regulated. And so in contrast, when we fast, many cells in our body go into a quieter metabolic state. And it's hard to generalize about the whole body, but the rationale here is that those cells will quiet down, and in quieting down, they will take up less of the toxic cancer treatments that are being administered and be somewhat protected from them, whereas the cancer cells are just revved up and metabolizing fast and taking up the chemotherapy or what other harmful treatment is being directed toward those cancer cells. And so that's the rationale here. There's some support for that. I'm not sure that it would be fair to say it's mainstream. And again, I would say your doctor should really be involved if you're embarking on this approach, and also be helpful to have expert dietary advice as well. So those are two other diets somewhat outside the mainstream, and there are more diets than we can discuss. But I would like to say a little more about what I would say the core of a reasonable diet. And it would include mainly plant-based foods. Doesn't have to be totally vegetarian, but mainly plant-based, whole foods, not processed, whole grains and vegetables, fruits and beans, fish and seafood is okay, and contains some healthy fats. So, and a moderate amount of healthy fats in general would include, for example, nuts as well, and some healthy oils like olive oil, for example. Limited or no red meat. Again, sugar, there are very few advocates of sugar out there right now. It's really, and I'm not advocating for it at all. And then avoiding processed meats is a good idea. That's salami, pepperoni, that kind of thing, sausage, ham, avoid. Now, of course, the idea, food is one of the great enjoyments in life. So it's nice that we enjoy it. And I think that's something that ought to be factored in. And I don't think we have to be fundamentalist about this, but I think it's good to take heed of what's generally healthy. And if you have something that's somewhat outside this and you really love it, and to be happy, feel you need it, one needs to be, again, somewhat flexible. And there is room for personal expression. Now, the area of dietary supplements, we heard one major organization was saying just avoid them, is just a wild and a broad area. It is somewhat of a wild west, frankly. There are botanicals, so based on plants, vitamins, minerals, and there are other types as well. And it's controversial because, say, some people like antioxidants, and that's supposed to be healthy. But if you're, say, in cancer treatment, uh, some of the cancer treatments may involve oxidizing cancer cells. So the theoretical argument here is that if you're taking something that a drug that oxidizes cancer cells, but at the same time you're taking a dietary supplement that's an antioxidant, you may be countering the therapy that's trying to help you. So that's one argument. And plus, there are just interactions among drugs and substances beyond the specific antioxidant interaction. So there's a lot of caution, I think, that ought to be exercised in taking dietary supplements especially during cancer therapy. The Deshay law, just to give you what's this environment we're in with supplements, the Deshay is Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act. Basically, it regulates dietary supplements like foods. So it's somewhat of an exaggeration, but not too much. It's to say, a dietary supplement is regulated by FDA about the same as a cucumber or a cabbage that you would buy at the store. It's pretty wide open. And what you get in a bottle of a dietary supplement, say a bottle of pills, that is not necessarily standardized. It may be, and what is labeled on that bottle may be what's in there, and maybe part of what's in there, it may not be in there at all. It's difficult to know. And that also applies to the dose. So one needs to be cautious and obtain supplements if one does go down that route from a reputable source. And that's hard to determine. I'm not saying there are none. I'm sure there's some out there, but there are a lot of sources, and not all of them are reliable. Again, let your physician know. Sometimes I know the physicians don't want to hear this, that you're taking supplements, but I think it's wise to let them know because of potential interactions. Now, on dietary supplements, you may see a seal, and these show that the supplement has been tested by an organization that's independent and has some reputable aspects to it. So, a reputable tester would be the USP or Consumer Labs, and their testing is independent of FDA. And I give a link from Consumer Reports where you can learn more about this. But what this is say you wanted vitamin D3. I'm not promoting it here. I have taken a little bit of it over time. But you see that USP there on the label. That means that the USP they're basically certifying that what's in the bottle is vitamin D3, and it's at that dose of 2,000 international units. So I'd say that's a good sign if you see that on what you buy. So there's some challenges in learning about dietary supplements, in particular vitamins, to actually know what helps. Sometimes studies will be done and they'll say that look at people who developed a certain cancer or all cancers and then compare them to people who were similar but did not develop cancer. And then find that, this is just a made up example, but people who did not develop cancer, they ate more oranges than people who developed cancer. So someone may infer, vitamin C is in oranges, so vitamin C protects against cancer. And some people may decide to take vitamin C based on that observation. Other researchers may go on and do a study to actually administer vitamin C to two groups of people, one who get vitamin C and the other gets placebos, and see what happens over time. These are hard studies to do and very expensive. But what happens over time is you get an answer. And what has happened for the cases or the situations of vitamin A, vitamin E, and now recently vitamin D, is that when the big studies were done, and most recently was vitamin D, given along with omega-3 fatty acids or N3 fatty acids. And this was at Harvard, led by Harvard, and reported in the New England Journal of Medicine, so very reputable journal, double-blind, placebo-controlled, 25,000 subjects, 5 years of follow-up. So this is an expensive study. A lot of effort went into it, and they found that neither vitamin D nor omega-3 fatty acids resulted in a lower incidence of invasive cancer or cardiovascular disease events. So that's somewhat sobering, and it doesn't mean vitamin D doesn't help in some situations, but it does tone down some of the advocacy. And there have been similar studies for, as I said, vitamin A, vitamin E. Now, another botanical or another dietary supplement is mushrooms, and mushrooms can have strong effects. No one will dispute that. We know that mushrooms, for example, can kill you, and that's a strong effect. We don't want that. They can also cause psychedelic experiences, and also stronger. Actually, they can be a tasty food item, and I think a lot of us like them. So what does that mean? I don't know what it tells us about the oncologic setting, but that's a mushroom. Does anybody know that one? It's called turkey tail. Somebody's raising their hand. Very good. And why do they call it turkey tail? Look at that turkey's tail. So anyway, turkey tail and mushrooms in general have been used for hundreds, thousands of years. They're part of traditional Chinese medicine. And this mushroom, I think, has a pretty safe track record. Now, mushrooms are often not taken whole. There are extracts of them. And when you get into how it's prepared, that may be actually an issue that's important. But some people believe that this promotes immune function, and it may be helpful to treat cancer. It's not approved in the United States for that. And I know that folks are using it for that goal. And I can't say one way or the other. I know some integrative oncologists think they're very good. Now, if you were getting it, you probably would want to get it again from a reputable source, and that it was prepared in a way that goes along with the ways that it was used in places that it was evaluated and showed some positive findings. So I'm not going to make a specific recommendation, but I will say that there's so many mushrooms. There's so many ways they can be prepared, and there's so many botanicals. And so you need to go down this road if you go down it with someone who's an expert in the area, and involve your physician. This is mistletoe, famous for, I think, kissing underneath. But here we bring it up because it may have some value in oncology. It's been investigated mostly in Europe and mostly in injectable forms, although there are forms that can be taken by mouth. And again, go online at clinicaltrials.gov. There are more than a dozen studies that are underway. We just don't know how helpful it is, but it's an example of a product being investigated, or it's actually not a product, but a botanical. sometimes I would say then we can get into, there's over promotion sometimes in these botanicals or in dietary supplements. This is not a botanical, but the idea of Zen in a bottle, maybe it's a cute way to say Zen is relaxation, but anybody who's done Zen in a serious way, probably, it's just ridiculous. But if you look at on the bottle, it says helps reduce occasional anxiety. Now, you should understand that dietary supplements cannot promote cure of any disease. So it says there helps reduce occasional anxiety. Now, in very small print, it says these statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. So actually, occasional anxiety, I kind of looked at it, they went right up to the line, because anxiety, if it goes on for 6 months, you can have an anxiety disorder, and that is a disease. But occasional anxiety probably doesn't meet that criterion. And so they very finally walked up to the line of making a medical claim, but they didn't. But I'd say this is over promotion. The other thing you have to be careful about if you're going to get into dietary supplements, just to make this brief, this is a product that is based on a substance called resveratrol that's in red wine. And it has been noted that red wine drinkers do have a lower incidence of a number of conditions. Heart disease is one that's been most noted, but some people talk about it in the cancer world. But the idea here is that 1 glass of wine has about 1 milligram of resveratrol, and this product has 500 milligrams of resveratrol. And so, although 1 glass of wine may be good, if you're thinking that the substance that's determining this is resveratrol, I don't know what 500 glasses of wine would do. Certainly wouldn't want to drink that much alcohol, but so, I think we need to be careful. More is not necessarily better. Too much of a good thing, can cause problems. So that's just another thing. And I should say, to be balanced, that resveratrol, as far as I can tell, has a relatively good safety record, but generally the safety information is based on short-term observations, not an extended period of use. So bottom line, I would say, is be careful what you ingest. Tell your physician and try to get expert advice. Be careful where you obtain any of these substances if you go down that road. And there's some very good websites. Sloan Kettering's About Herbs is really good. And then the NIH, National Cancer Institute, has PDQ, and they'll give you some balanced, reliable information about supplements. And I would say, if you have disease, what your stage and prognosis is really important when you look at dietary supplements. Are you under treatment? Extremely important. And finally, what your preferences, how I'll just leave it at that. There's a lot of room for personal preference here. I think this is my last botanical. This is cannabis or marijuana. I happen to know somebody that got a permit to grow this. They had 200 plants, and you could smell the resin, from about 10 yards away. It was about ready for harvest. And medical cannabis, or any cannabis, contains two mainly studied ingredients, THC and CBD. There are chemical formulas there, but there are 100 other cannabinoids, similar substances, and they haven't all been studied, but they can help. They may be able to help with chemotherapy-induced nausea and vomiting, appetite, pain, sleep, and mood. And the THC, the plant itself is psychoactive, and some plants are grown to have more THC or less THC and more CBD. So the THC is more psychoactive, the CBD less psychoactive. And it really can vary depending on the strain and a number of factors. Cannabis is illegal at the federal level still, and the states down at the bottom, DC, Maryland, Virginia, they do allow medical cannabis. But because it's illegal federally, it's been very hard to study. And there are different ways to deliver vaping, smoking, eating, or ingesting. And so those make a difference in how it behaves in us. And so there are a lot of issues to consider if one embarks down this road. And again, it's good to have the physician involved and someone who's understands cannabis. And if you go down that road, start slow and go from there. But there are issues with dosing. It's, again, this is not FDA regulated. It's illegal at the federal level. So dosing can be tricky and has to be done carefully. Same thing with potency. We can't really standardize that in the way that drugs are standardized. So this is another area for personal preference and taste. And a lot of people have claimed and report benefiting from cannabis. It's not for everybody, and it really depends on your situation and where you are. So to move into another common area here, acupuncture. A lot of people have benefited from acupuncture. It's part of traditional Chinese medicine. And I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about it, except you'll see that this is based on some of the national organizations I mentioned at the beginning. Acupuncture can help with pain, nausea and vomiting. Acupressure can be helpful as well. So that does not involve the needles. And the needles are pretty painless. They're and very fine. But acupuncture doesn't involve that. It can be self-administered. And finally, electroacupuncture involves a very small electrical current, and that can be advantageous sometimes. So again, I can't go into acupuncture in detail, but a lot of folks do find that helpful, and it doesn't require effort. The receiver of acupuncture's part, although it may involve some cost. Let's see, I have a little time left. I probably can't go into all this stuff about placebo effects, but I would say placebo effects are a good thing, and I think if we can get them, they're wonderful. They don't they don't necessarily involve deception or a sugar pill. This book was written by the world expert on placebo effects. And there's a program at Harvard University Medical School in placebo studies. So it's getting attention and finding the real ingredient of fake medicine. Basically, I guess because we're running out of time, the idea here, this is from the New England Journal of Medicine, and it basically says that we should try to get placebo effects when we can, and that they're good, and that actually healthcare providers should try to obtain them. And I want to go back and just say they arise from the medical ritual. I'm reading on the bottom, the context of treatment, the patient-provider relationship, and the power of imagination, trust, and hope. That's where they come from. the placebo effects. And it's based on, our mental state, the people around us, the environment we're in. They can generate positive placebo effects. And they work through our expectations and some conditioning. And the placebo effect is not apparent in all conditions. So it's not going to work for cancer, okay? Placebo effect is not going to cure cancer. But before I get to that, I'm going to skip over nocebo. That's just negative effects that can be generated in some of the same ways the placebo effect, by a difficult environment, difficult social interactions, difficult mental state. But what can be helped by placebo effects are some of the conditions that we address in integrative oncology: pain, anxiety, depression, nausea and vomiting, stress, difficulty with sleep, quality of life. So all of those can be helped by the placebo effect. And the idea, this is from Dr. Bushnell, who's at NIH, National Center for Complementary and Integrative Medicine, showing how emotions and cognition interact and also can promote pain or decrease pain. And I think it's a really important area of research and is helpful to us in dealing with difficult issues like pain, insomnia, and other forms of suffering. And I'm not going to go into this neuroanatomy of this, but it's just to say that they showed that distraction, so where we place our attention, can affect pain and also the emotions that we have. So sadness, for example, could increase pain, and happiness would decrease pain. So as a bottom line, and sorry I went through this quickly, but you can get the placebo effect in many healthcare settings. And healthcare providers should try to enhance it. And I think all of us should try to enhance it. It cannot co-occur. You can get drug effects that are helpful along with placebo effects to reduce pain, for example. And the placebo effect can apply to integrative oncology's kind of target conditions. Finally, as I said, this is not a cookie cutter enterprise, and there's so much potential for us to use our own uniqueness, our beauty, and our tastes to find a path within this field of integrative oncology. So I hope I've laid out kind of a smorgasbord or a buffet for you. And the buffet is being served at cancer centers and hospitals, some community sites like the Smith Center, and similar sites like Hope Connections and Life with Cancer, and private practitioners around the world, really. So that's all from my prepared words, and thanks for your attention. I haven't heard a peep from anybody, but now is the time. Thank you.